Kia ora, I'm Amanda Gillies.
I'm Sharon Brett Kelly.
I'm Alexia Russell.
I'm Davina Zimmer.
I'm Gwen McClure, and today on The Detail.
All right, do you want me to start?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, you lead the way.
Okay.
We'll follow your lead.
All right, another year over for The Detail, our 7th year, and we've been funded for 2026. So great news on that one. And this year, it's ranged from the deadly serious to the fun and fluffy. And today, we're going to talk you through our year, give you a few insights into what we got up to, the highlights, the delights. And basically, we have grouped this into 5 areas that seem to come up over and again, and that they'll be finance, the environment, health, consumer affairs, and politics. So, Sharon, would you like to take it away with the money business?
Money business, even though I'm terrible at maths. Right, so we're going to launch into our finance stuff, which, as usual, there's plenty around the place.
A look at Fonterra's deal with the biggest dairy company in the world.
Westpac has stepped up first and is trialling a new basic account where you don't need all the standard requirements.
It's easy to laugh at names like Trump Coin and Peanut the Squirrel, but for many in the digital finance world, meme coins are ringing alarm bells.
It's been weeks of bad economic news, tariffs, trade wars, and the rising possibility of a global recession.
The Magnificent Seven, Michael Burry, the Big Short legend, and the AI bubble. One of my big stories this year was one headed Bubble Trouble, and that was about the AI stocks. These are the artificial intelligence giants like NVIDIA that we hear about day after day after day. Now, they are valued at trillions of dollars. They are the most valuable companies now in the world. But what people are really worried about is that the share price is screaming through the roof, and that's because it's based on what people think these companies will be worth in the future. The big question is, are they out of control? That's the bubble thing. They need to spend trillions on infrastructure, the data banks, to kind of feed them. But where is this money going to come from? And that's the crux of the stories, the things that are worrying people. And what is really scary is that there'll be a repeat of the dot-com collapse or the global financial crisis, which has had ripple effects around the world in the past. Going from global to personal finance, insurance, it's the thing that we all have to have, but we hate to have because we hate paying for that. It's a real dilemma at the moment because so many people are struggling with paying the bills. And the question is, how much insurance do you really need? And what we heard in this podcast is that lots of people are cutting their health insurance because they just cannot afford it.
It's never been more important, insurance. It's always been important, but now it's just on another level. So there's so many risks with everything, with housing, with medical needs. You know, we've seen so many climate changes coming through with regards to natural disasters, natural hazards.
Now, the problem is house insurance has risen nearly 1,000% in 25 years, and health insurance is through the roof.
Where does it stop, right? How many costs in my life are sort of taking a gamble on the what ifs?
What's also revealed is that lots of people are now turning to or thinking about self-insurance, which is where they build up their own slush fund to cover off any big bills that might pop up, such as surgery.
We also had a lot of stories this year about tariffs, about Donald Trump's actions having worldwide repercussions, particularly in New Zealand with, first of all, 15% going on our goods and then being wiped off food. It just seems that everything Donald Trump is doing seeps through to the rest of the world. And that's what makes our economic recovery so questionable, because we just don't know what he's going to decide next.
And that flows on, I think, too, which I think is bloody heartbreaking, and a lot of this affects our mums and dads' outfits in New Zealand, is the number of businesses that have closed this year. I think in the first half of this year alone, 1,070 businesses were forced to shut up shop. That's a 12% increase on last year. And I say mums and dads because these are the guys that pour their hearts and souls into the family business. They roll up their sleeves. They're there first thing in the morning, last thing at night. Everything in their life is riding on this. crops, but it's just simply been too hard for them and they've been forced to shut up shop. It's been a tough year for Kiwis right across the board, and it's not just mums and dads. These are established businesses as well, your Smith & Co's or whoever, who have been having to close their doors, and that's just, I think, a sign of the times at the moment.
On the other hand, farmers aren't doing too badly at the moment, and they're talking about this dual recovery. Here's an example, the Fonterra sale, selling some of their main brands to Lactalis, or if you're New Zealand, Lactalis. And those farmers have now, since we did the podcast on that, voted to accept that deal, and they will be getting, an average Waikato farmer will be getting about $400,000 in their bank account before field days next year, because that is the country's biggest ever business transaction, a $4.26 billion payday.
I'd take that. Kia ora, I'm Amanda Gillies, and today on The Detail, the fierce battle over mining on the Denniston Plateau on the west coast.
I think it would be fair to say that this government does not have a great record on climate policy.
The waterways aren't in a good state.
The Hodaki Gulf has long been the sparkling jewel in our Pacific crown, but have we loved it to death?
The anti-pest army is being mobilised. Local Facebook pages are buzzing. The MPI 0800 number memorised, and a swarm of publicity embarked upon.
A fourth yellow-legged hornet queen has been found in Auckland.
They can drag it into the water and basically drown and eat it.
Kia ora, I'm Davina Zimmer, and today on The Detail, the number of turtles being found in streams and waterways across New Zealand has been steadily increasing over the years. And it's an issue concerning even the biggest turtle fans.
Could 2026 be the year that the kakapo breeding program takes such a big leap forward that conservationists can take a step back?
I'm just going to get my umbrella. Guess what my umbrella's got on it? Butterflies, no surprise.
We seem to be obsessed with animals, everything from butterflies to turtles to kakapo to yellow-legged hornets. So we've done quite a bit on that. The yellow-legged hornet one, when we did the podcast, I think there were 4 queens found and there are now 26. In fact, I was coming home on the bus last night and there's a new sign up just outside my house saying that the hornets have spread. It's, in the words of Phil Lester, an expert on this, a potential nightmare. Davina, I loved your turtle podcast just because it was terrifying. Can you talk a bit about that?
I mean, you go into it thinking, this is going to be about turtles, it will be fun, they're chill things. And then I think I left slightly traumatised after learning that, turtles eat things like possums and cats and rabbits. Because you think of them as these slow-moving kind of creatures, but they're actually...
And they live for a long time.
And
That's
they live for a long time. And that is the issue, is that people are buying these cute little, tiny little 50-cent piece turtles. And then, the kids grow up, they leave home, the mum and dad are at home and they're like, what do we do with this turtle? And they think, we'll let it out into the wild. It can live and it can thrive. And for one, it doesn't really live and thrive. They don't, because they're not used to that kind of environment. And they actually wreak havoc. They will, if they see a nice spot to sunbathe, but there's a mama bird and sitting on a nest there, they'll just kick that mama bird off and those eggs will break or they won't hatch. And yeah, they're quite destructive. I think there's hundreds of them now. I think I read an article the other week saying that they had actually found a breeding group in the wild, and so they're starting to breed as well. And so there's multitudes of issues. I mean, Auckland's actually put in a ban, but that's only a regional ban, so it's kind of hard to get on top of things. There's a whole lot, I think, that people don't think of when they get a little reptile.
Coming back from that interview and listening to something, then taking off your headphones, and it was turning from a cute story to a nightmare, to a horror film.
I think when you were producing it, you looked over at me like through the little slit of the computers, and you were like, well, that has well and truly traumatised me.
Yeah, I had no idea that a turtle could eat your cat.
Yeah.
But, talk about animals breeding, some good news on the kakapo front. It's a mast year this year for the first time in 4 years. This could be the first time that there are enough kakapo to stop having that huge high level of interference where, stealing the eggs and incubating them so that the female will lay another clutch of eggs. And Alison Ballance has got a new edition of the Kakapo Files coming out on the 16th of this month, and she's going to follow the whole season as it goes through. So that'll be riveting listening. She was pretty cool. So the other big thing of the environment is what the government's trying to do to it. Amanda?
May have drawn the short straw on these ones. Thank you, Alexia. No, I looked at the government's proposed changes to New Zealand fisheries management, the law to protect the Hauraki Gulf, that was another one, and then also mining on the west coast. Who knew that was going to be so controversial? All three of them, the feedback, wow, no middle ground. You're either passionately for or passionately against. I did get one charming little message into my inbox letting me know that they'd quite like to throw me overboard with the fish. So it is hard to get neutral ground on that. Actually hard to find a journalist to want to talk about it because especially if they're local, they're like, hell no. It's so controversial that they just think, nah, it's too hot to handle. We don't want a bar of it. They'll do it what they need to for either their paper or their radio or whatever. But to actually go speak on a podcast and give opinion for 22 minutes, they're like, thanks, but no thanks. So, yeah. And it reminds me, actually, Alexia, when we did the Who's Afraid of Aotearoa, which was, remember when the government also was rolling back all the Māori names and they didn't want Māori in books and they didn't want Māori in our titles or anything like that. So I went to a Māori professor, I went to a Māori journalist to say, what's going on? Holy Toledo. I got wannabe Māori Amanda. I got you ignorant honky. There were again no middle ground, just absolutely people who are, yes, we need the Māori names, no, who is New Zealand or Aotearoa, God forbid you say it, become. So yeah, hot and controversial topics.
Midwives, social workers, dental assistants, OTs, speech and language therapists, lab technicians, hospital aides. The list goes on.
What is going on in health and who is next?
Associate Health Minister Casey Costello says our aged care model is out of date and piecemeal change isn't the solution.
We don't need another report to tell us what's wrong. I've got 5 of them sitting on my desk.
It can strike anyone at any stage and can be both heartbreaking and bewildering. It's called dementia.
The HIV outbreak in Fiji, the rising meth crisis behind it, and why other Pacific Island countries are on high alert. Earlier this year, I did an episode on the meth crisis and sort of the resulting HIV outbreak in Fiji, and that situation's really troubling. It's a very different prognosis, I suppose is the word for people there, because a lot of them aren't getting diagnosed and so they're not getting treatment. Treatment is available there, but people aren't accessing it as much.
What's the connection between the meth and the HIV?
Yeah, so I talked to a woman named Renata Ram from UNAIDS. She told me that sex is still a transmitter of HIV, but the other very big transmitter is intravenous drug use. So people are using needles to use meth, and that's fueled this outbreak. And the numbers are really high. Last year, there were about 1,500 new cases there, which was almost a 300% increase from the year before that. But actually, they think that that number is probably much, much higher, that they don't actually have any idea really of the numbers. And that's actually not just in Fiji. They think that that crisis is spreading kind of around some of the other Pacific Island countries, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, Tonga. And for that podcast, I also talked to a guy named Jose Sousa Santos. He is an expert on international crime and drug trafficking. And he said a lot of what's driving meth use is that international crime syndicate is sort of setting up camp, a staging area in Fiji. And they're now paying local dealers in meth instead of in cash. So then those local dealers turn around and sell it to local populations to profit off of that, obviously, and then local populations are getting hooked.
But this was backed up by the head of the Ministerial Advisory Group on Organised Crime, who I spoke to, who's saying that the islands are staging, by Mexican, basically, Colombian drug cartels, they're staging posts for that drug to come into New Zealand. So
exactly.
This is
it's bad news for
our
us
problem too.
Yeah,
we need to get in there and help solve it.
Well, and not only is it our problem, but some of it is actually our doing as well, because Jose said that we are deporting people. So, we get the 501s deported from Australia, but we also deport people to Pacific Island countries. People, he was telling me there was one guy who was saying, I don't belong here, I'm a Kiwi. And so these people go, they don't have a support network. They do have criminal records. That's why they've been deported. But they don't have any support network or kind of community there. And so it's very natural to fall into crime. And then they also have communities back here, so those drugs can come back into New Zealand. And the other sort of health-related story I did a couple months ago was about sunscreen and how an Australian consumer protection group did all these sunscreen tests, kind of like Consumer NZ used to do here, and found out that majority of them were testing below their SPF claims. But one of them was a standout. It was listed as an SPF 50+, but it was testing at a 4. So that's obviously pretty shocking. So that was pulled off the shelves by the brand itself while they did more investigation. But that has actually kicked off a string of other products being either pulled off shelves or recalled because it shares the same base. So as of the most recent update, which I think was just earlier this month, there's now 18 other sunscreens that have been pulled off the shelves. And a lot of those are sold here as well. I think, the message there, the takeaway was give it a Google before you buy your sunscreen this summer, but don't not wear sunscreen because of that. There is still good sunscreen out there. And even if it's a 30 listed as a 50, you're still getting something. But Davina, you've done some reporting this year on consumer stories.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a big year for consumer stories.
How means testing is creeping into our lives. The cost of death.
The internet traps designed to make you spend more money or pressure you into not cancelling a subscription.
What retiring 3G by the end of this year means for New Zealanders.
I mean, there's a lot of issues that are intrinsically linked to people and hence their consumer stories. But the dark patterns one was quite interesting. It was a report done by Consumer NZ called Invisible Influence. And it kind of talked about all of the different ways that online websites kind of suck you in and get you to spend more money. And it's things like, scarcity queues. Everyone's seen it, the only one left at this price, or hurry up and buy now, or like even just the timer countdown, creating that pressure. And then there's the hidden fees, the service charges that Uber Eats is one where you see them and you get the price and then you get to the checkout and it's $5, $10 more than what you were thinking. But you get to that point and you're like, why not? Subscription traps. I think HelloFresh had just had a big court case wrap up. They were fined about $850,000. And then privacy as well. You get the little pop-up saying, sign up to receive 10% off, but then you have to give your email, you have to give your phone number, your gender, your age, and then that's all data that they then use to God knows what. They sell it onwards, they use it to target you with other adverts. The one thing that really stood out to me was that these aren't new, right? These are all things that we know about as well, and yet we continue to shop online. It is reasonable to say, well, I'm just not going to buy from that website anymore. I'm going to buy in-store.
I did a story kind of coming out of this asbestos sand situation. And I talked to someone from Consumer NZ, and she was sort of talking about less about those dark patterns, but about where you spend your money and the safety around that, and saying basically, if you are buying something for kids for Christmas, just don't go to Temu, don't go to Shine, don't go to AliExpress. We know that those are not safe places.
Well, but it's also tricky, right? Because we're in a cost of living crisis and times are tough, money's tight, and so you want to get your kid a fun present. You can understand why parents go to somewhere like Temu because they think I can get 5 different things for the price of one thing at a small boutique store.
Now, we were talking about regulation and laws, etc. before, because there's been an awful lot happening in that territory this year. And Amanda, you took the temperature of politics with the amazing guy on Esplanade.
Oh, that was a highlight. That guy is a walking encyclopedia of politics.
I think the mood is one of disillusionment with a lot of the political scene, frankly.
Interesting, because obviously this year is the year before the election next year, and we wanted to get a flavour of what's going on and who's likely to be rolled and who's sitting, in the best position. We could be, and, Guyan has all the facts and figures, but next year, if National doesn't get in, it'll be the first time ever that we've had a one-term national government. Twice we've had it with Labour in the past, and I reckon we could be facing it. And it's interesting because Christopher Luxon, when you meet him, is a very personable, very lovely, charming guy, but he just does not connect with New Zealanders.
What a week for Te Pāti Māori, a highly public split with a powerful ally after accusations of a toxic leadership, over-the-top egos, a dictatorship.
A trend that's been rising across multiple governments over the last several years. The increasing numbers of politicians failing to manage real or perceived conflicts of interest.
The importance of the Tamaki Makaurau by-election and the seat no one expected or wanted to contest so soon.
It's a local body election year.
The shake-up of our election laws has ruffled more than a few feathers.
The Wellington mayoralty race. It was looking like a rather bland affair until the unexpected return of dirty politics.
So what does this bill do?
We don't know.
But we did do quite a lot about some legislation, including one that I talked to Laura Walters about, the Regulatory Standards Bill, which I'm not sure anyone actually is any the wiser about what that bill is about, including the politicians who voted for it. But there was an awful lot of legislation going through, a lot of legislation being overturned this year, and we did dwell on that quite a bit.
And a lot of it is going through so quickly. This is what I think is scaring a lot of people. Is
48 hours for the pay equity decision.
Straight through. And we're not getting the time for the public to have submissions, to have their say. It's just like, whoop, done.
However, that was not our top podcast of the year by a million miles, Amanda.
What was our top
Your podcast on Tom Phillips.
Wow, that was a huge story that captured the nation. And we got lucky because the wonderful Tony Wall, who is an old school, brilliant stuff reporter, I called him early in the morning and I said, because I knew we were going to be on a rush this through as quick as possible. New sort of suppression orders were hovering. And brilliant. He did what so many journalists don't do now. When I called, he actually answered the phone. And he's so gorgeous. And he said he was on site. He'd been there. This is a guy who'd slept in the forest, in the woods, to get an understanding of what this Tom Phillips and his kids were going through. He'd been on the story since day one. And he was like, yeah, g'day, mate. Yep, I'll talk to you in 5 minutes. Give me 5, I'll call you back. Raced upstairs, thankfully got a studio. I think it was about 7:30 in the morning. And boom, we did it. And he gave me the most interesting insight. But it was a huge story, not just for New Zealand, but around the world. And so to get Tony Wall's insight into it, and there he was, he'd talked to the family, he knew it inside out. And to get that and that information, it was, I'll be forever grateful.
Sharon, one of your stories I love, because you and I share this obsession with Antarctica, was the story about the heroes.
The heroes.
Yes,
the heroes of the amazing Antarctica Mercy Dash to pick up someone who needed urgent medical care. And one of them was co-pilot Ben Pickering, who's just in his 20s. And the other is Adam Palmer, who was running the mission on the ground, so he wasn't in that Defence Force Super Hercules that was going there. But they were so modest and humble about this mission. And the fact was, they had to make life and death decisions, and they knew what was ahead of them, and they knew that at various points on the way, it was so high risk that they could have died. The whole mission could have been disastrous. But, they had to deal with things like freezing temperatures, something called the black hole effect. They had to use night vision goggles all the way there until they got to the point where they landed on ice. They took them off, but there was another risk that they had to face because of that. And but I think the thing was that just 2 hours into that many hour Mercy Dash, we heard about what happens when you get beyond that point of safe return and the weather turns bad, and basically it might be too dangerous to carry on, but you've got no choice. Can I talk about one thing which you'll probably cut out, but a big highlight of my year was a week spent in Taiwan. What goes on in that small island will affect very, very severely what goes on in New Zealand. If this island is ever invaded by China, and people I spoke to while I was there all say it's not if but when. And I think being on the ground and talking to a range of people about what it's like to live in the shadow of China, to live with possible invasion, to have annual drills to prepare for some kind of an attack, it's not something in New Zealand that we can even imagine. But despite all that, the people are incredibly resilient and generous. It was quite an astounding week for me.
Now we have to go because our time is up, but some thank yous to our wonderful operators who are just amazing as always. Our newsroom and our RNZ colleagues, especially those who made regular appearances, people who did podcasts for us like Susanna Lautawa and Connor McClay and Davina. Goodbye to you and the best of luck for your new job on TV in Wellington. And it's been so wonderful to have you for the last couple of years, and we're going to miss you
I'm already emotional
so
today.
much.
No, I'm going to miss you guys all too.
You're a star.
You are a star.
Absolutely. Now as seen on TV.
Now, we're back on January the 26th, but until then, RNZ will be running some of our best episodes and Newsroom will be featuring them on its website. So,
bye.
Ka kite anō.
Mā te wā.
The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and NZ On Air.